I hate making these videos, and I hope that someday this channel is entirely just something where occasionally I come on here and I talk about a gun that I've been shooting in my own leisure time, and then I talk about it. I really hope that someday this channel is completely useless when it comes to gun news. But unfortunately, today we have some updates that I think are worth talking about when it comes to banning of barrels. This little P365 barrel. This is going to potentially require face-to-face background checks in the state of California if the bill that is likely to pass, in my opinion, is passed and signed by Gavin Newsom. We're also going to be talking about the brief update on the Glock ban, the ban on the sales of Glocks. And we're going to cover a few of the little details that I think are worth noting because a lot of people kind of gloss over these. There's some exemptions that are worth noting, and there's a new exemption that's probably going to get you a little bit hot and bothered. So I want to say thank you to the sponsor of this video, the sponsor of this channel, the biggest supporter of the channel by far, and something that I think is very relevant and might be interesting to you. That is Delete Me. Delete Me is a service that I have paid for nearly 4 years now. And after about 3 years of paying for it, they reached out to me and asked if I wanted to be a sponsor, or if they could sponsor me. And I thought that that was awesome. What Delete Me does is they go online and they search for your information. Chances are, if you were to pull up on a second screen or after this video is over, type in your name and maybe one bit of information about you, you could probably find your name, your address, all your family members' name and addresses, your kids' phone numbers. All that information is a minute and a half Google search away from being found. And in an era of information, it's really good to have a team on your side that is going through and constantly taking that information off the internet, because those data brokers are constantly uploading it. Delete Me makes it significantly harder for you to be found on the internet, which can protect you from online threats. It's a service that I have paid for a long time. I've spoken about why, and I'm not going to go into great detail. Delete Me makes it significantly harder for your information to be found on the internet. It saves you a ton of time. It's worth it, in my opinion. And if you use the link in the description or in the pinned comment, you can save some money with Delete Me. This is unfortunate news today, but we are in fact talking about SB 704, which is the barrel background check law, and AB 1127, which is the Glock ban. I'm gonna have some links probably like in the comments or something like that. We're talking about the Glock ban. We're talking about barrel bans, which would also cover things like complete uppers in the state of California, simple things like this little barrel here. And then I might touch on the Radian Ramjet and some concerns I have about that I've previously kept quiet, but it's worth talking about as well. So 704, the gun barrel face-to-face transaction requirement and background check system. Now, this information is going to be linked in the comments or something like that. And it's a Reddit post that kind of breaks it down. It's going to be a lot more tangible for you to come back and reference later in the future. So I'm going to kind of gloss over some of the big details. And then if you are ever confused, you can come back to this video, find that link, go through it, so you don't have to watch this video multiple times. I know how frustrating that can be if you forget a detail, where did he say that sort of information. So SB 704 is a face-to-face requirement with a background check for barrels in the state of California. Now, this has not been signed into law. It has not made its way all the way through the state Senate, and it has not been signed by Gavin Newsom. However, it's very likely that this would actually get passed, because the people that vote for this kind of stuff and the people that vote for the legislature that writes these bills are generally in support of it. So what you could do, I know a lot of you are left-leaning, Democrat, liberal, whatever it is you want to call it, reach out to your representatives, tell them that you typically vote one way, and just make the threat, whether it's real or not, that you would not vote for them in the future if they support this. This bill would require a potentially up to $5 fee to go to the DOJ and anytime you want to buy a barrel. So if you wanted to buy this P365 barrel from a gun store, or a similar barrel, or an aftermarket barrel, or an AR-15 upper in the state of California, if this bill is passed, you'd have to go to a gun store. That gun store would have to do a background check on you. You would have to pay a minimum of $5 currently. However, every year it could go up $1, assuming that the DOJ determines that it's needed to cover the costs, which we don't even need to bring up the slippery slope fallacy because it's not a fallacy. We see this with everything else. They are going to eventually increase this $1 year over year to do a background check on this. In addition to that, it's going to require labor and time from gun stores to do this, so they are most likely going to have to charge a fee to process this, especially if it's some sort of consignment or private party transaction. So expect barrels to get more expensive if this is to go into effect. The face-to-face provision, meaning that you can't just order them online and have them sent to your house, is going to take effect if this goes into law, January 1st of 2026. The background check provision would start July 1st of 2027. Now, unless the Supreme Court takes the Duncan versus Bonta magazine capacity lawsuit and has really, really strong language in it, this most likely is going to be the route that they are going to be going for anything gun related in the future. That's my speculation. And unless they have that really strong language in a potential Supreme Court decision, if they decide to take that case, this is most likely going to stand for the time being because we know how the Ninth Circuit is. So you'd have to be 18 years or old and not a prohibited possessor to actually buy a barrel. The department is not allowed to retain the background check information once the check is completed and the barrel is listed as delivered. We all know how good the DOJ systems are. Me personally, I think I've been doxxed at least 2 times, possibly 3 times by the DOJ. I think it is just twice, but it's only a matter of time before more of my information gets sent out by the DOJ, which makes today's sponsor very, very relevant. Now, if you violate this, first time is a misdemeanor, second is a misdemeanor up to 1 year in jail and up to a $1,000 fine, and then further violations after that could potentially be a felony or $2,000 fine. There is no COE and FFL 03 exemption unless it is a curio and relic barrel, which, depending on the DOJ description of that, I don't think that that's something that's inherently defined by the federal government, because currently curio and relic firearms, we have a pretty good understanding of what those are. But when you start modifying those curio and relics, sometimes that makes them no longer curio and relic firearms. So I'm not sure how this is going to pan out until the DOJ puts out their guidance on this. I'm going to touch real briefly on the Radian Ramjet just because it's topical. Recently, Radian, if you guys don't know what the Radian Ramjet is, it is a muzzle device that is a compensator that attaches to the barrel with a cross-slotted screw. The screw does not thread into the barrel, it just threads into the other side of the compensator. It's tapered so that as you tighten it down, it locks it in place. If this was a threaded barrel, this gun would be considered an assault weapon, but it's not. However, lugs, most people don't know this, lugs on a barrel, like on an MP5 style firearm, are considered threads for the purpose of the assault weapon ban, because those lugs are capable of accepting a flash hider or suppressor. Well, you might be thinking to yourself, Reno, the Radian Ramjet, it's not a suppressor. It's not capable of attaching a suppressor. Well, Radian posted on Instagram the other day that they actually do have a suppressor that mounts to these barrels now. So this barrel is capable of attaching a suppressor currently. Now it is currently capable of attaching a suppressor. It's all going to come down to if the DOJ decides someday that they want to change what they believe a lug is. If they consider that little notch that just is a spot for a tapered pin to crank onto, if they consider that a lug, Radian Ramjets are gone like that, with almost no adequate means of recourse against the DOJ. Touched on that. Now, the Glock ban. Let's pick up my Glock prop again. Now, the Glock ban, for those of you that don't know, is covering basically the type of trigger mechanism in the Glock. It uses what's called a cruciform. For those of you that don't really understand what that is, the firing pin on a Glock has a little ledge at the back of it that the trigger bar pushes against, slides off, striker goes forward, hits the firing pin. There are probably other styles of firearms that are striker fired that use a cruciform mechanism that can be converted to machine guns through the use of an already illegal to own, possess, or buy switch. Now, the Glock ban is a ban not necessarily on Glocks. It is a ban on firearms that use a cruciform style trigger. Glocks are the main culprit here, that can be used with a machine gun conversion device. So they're banning the sale from a dealer of Glocks, technically all Glock clones as well, because it uses a cruciform which can be made into a machine gun with a machine gun conversion device, the already illegal product. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, who's exempt from this? Are private party exempt? Private party is exempt, law enforcement agencies are exempt, and recently, active law enforcement will still be able to, if this bill is passed, active law enforcement will just be able to buy their own personal firearms, at which point private party transfers are still legal. So depending on how the wording is here, Glocks are going to go up in price significantly, even the Gen 3s, because if this bill is passed, which I believe it likely would be, the only Glocks that will be able to be sold in the state of California are the ones that already exist or the ones that law enforcement buy new and then sell to people on the secondhand market. So if you have been very, very interested in getting a Glock, right now the prices are normal. Right now, Glock prices are completely normal. And if you've been thinking, hey, later this year or next year, I was going to get a Glock, it wouldn't be a terrible time to get one. I'm not going to say panic buy. And honestly, there are better striker fire pistols out there than Glock. I mean, Glock is great for a lot of reasons. You can be very competitive with them in competition shooting. They're very reliable, durable, dependable when it comes to defensive guns. But if you really, really want a Glock, it wouldn't be a terrible idea to just do it, assuming that you can financially afford to do so, and just get one. I mean, I might end up getting a Gen 3 17 because I don't currently own one. I might just end up doing that. We'll see. A dealer would not be able to sell from their inventory after January 1st of 2026 any Glock, any Shadow Systems pistol, I think even the Smith & Wesson Sigma SD9VEs would be considered a cruciform style trigger. The Gen 5s, even though they have some polymer material at the back of the frame intended to prevent using a switch, that little polymer material would not be considered adequate based on my reading of this. So any machine gun convertible pistol, your Glock, that is not in the possession of a dealer in California prior to January 1st of 2026, if it's not in their possession prior to then, they won't be able to sell it to anyone but law enforcement. Now, private party transactions are still going to be exempt, and law enforcement will still be exempt, whether as a department or as an individual. So don't worry, cops. You guys still have your off-roster money-making scheme. In addition to that, just one little interesting note. If you, for whatever reason, get involved with the police, they take your firearms, and then they have to give them back to you, I believe that will be exempt as well. Now, let's do my thoughts on this, whether this could pass. Well, unfortunately, the Democrat supermajority in the legislature in the state of California, they don't care. They're most likely gonna approve this. It's made it through every single process so far, seemingly fairly easily. The one potential big brain strategy that NEWSOM could use here is NEWSOM could potentially veto this, only for it to get some sort of majority that allows it to still pass, in which case it still passes, and then he gets to have his gun control, but then pretend to be a moderate. He could just veto it and then kind of instruct the legislature, hey, don't do this, right? So that he has his way of saying, I'm not anti-gun. I don't want to ban Glocks, the most common defensive pistol, because it really would be a bad look for him and anyone with future aspirations if they are on record as being one of the people that banned the most common pistol sold in America. I mean, the Glock 19, I don't think you can go to a gun store anywhere and not find at least one in the store. If it's not on the shelf, it's probably in the back on waiting periods in the state of California. So Glocks are the epitome of in common use for legal purposes gun. It's kind of like the pistol. So I find it hard to believe that this would ever be upheld in court, but there could be a weird period of time in the state of California where you wouldn't be able to buy a Glock, which there are, yes, potentially better options on the market, depending on what your needs, desires, and preferences are, I guess. So that's kind of where we're at. Really relying on the Supreme Court to put some language in a magazine ban or hardware ban that's ironclad, but I really don't expect that. I expect some sort of weak decision from the Supreme Court if they even decide to hear the Duncan case. The Glock ban, unfortunately, while again, it probably would not be upheld in the courts, would rely on some sort of intervention from the Ninth Circuit, which I don't foresee happening, or Gavin Newsom vetoing it, which would have to be some sort of like 5D chess type of move from him. So that's kind of where we're at. Unfortunately, I have bad news for you. I believe the Glock ban has already been read twice, at which point it'll get read a third time and then voted on. So if you haven't already contacted your legislative reps and cyberbullied them on Twitter a little bit as well, please do so. I'll have links to the CRPA down below if you want to get in contact with them and donate to them and support them, because they have been trying to fight this. They always have reps down in the state capitol speaking whenever they're allowed to and trying to kill bills. Unfortunately, this one has made it through quite a ways. Gun Owners of California is another good one. Unfortunately, Sam Paredes recently passed away, which was really sad. He's been a very active member in doing that sort of stuff as well. So if you want to support organizations, CRPA and GOC are both great organizations to support. You guys know the drill. Have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace. So thank you to Delete Me for supporting this channel. It makes everything that I do possible because I operate basically at a loss. YouTube ad revenue is pennies on a video like this. If I get 20,000 views, I might make $40. And when I do gun reviews, I will probably lose hundreds and hundreds, if not $1,000 on any individual gun review that I do. So they make this stuff possible. Thank you.